Earthbound, aka Mother 2 in Japan, is one of those cult classic games that just seem to get bigger and bigger over time, especially after Ness, the main character, was put into Super Smash Bros. As a unique tone and atmosphere, seeming at first innocent but hiding something darker underneath. So, we're going to look at some games that have both similar feelings and mechanics, and I've tried to put in a good variety for people to try some new games. So let's get started with Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass is a game that really has the feeling of an Earthbound or Undertale style game. It has a very light and whimsical feel to it at the start, giving you a false sense of peace and tranquility before pulling away the veil into something much more disturbing. It's a game that doesn't get enough attention, even though it is pretty highly rated by the people who have played it. It also has very fun mechanics, which is part of what makes it unique. The main character is able to shift form. You'll also be using those shifting forms outside of combat, as you'll use it to interact with different NPCs and open up different routes. Much of Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass is actually side content. There are a ton of optional things to do and see, and a lot of it is well worth doing. There's a lot under the surface here in Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass. One minute you think the game is going in one direction, and it suddenly opens up into something deeper, which is one of the things that made Earthbound and the rest of the Mother series so great. You can get Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass on Steam. Omori is a game that really pulls you into its world. Much like Earthbound, the surface might at one moment be whimsical and playful, and the next you're pulled into full-blown psychological horror. It has a lot of complex themes dealing with mental illness, trauma, and friendship. It's a very artistic game with a lot to offer you as long as you're willing to keep an open mind and take the trip through it. It also has some things that make it unique and different than Earthbound, having multiple different endings, replayability, but it comes back to the core of what they have in common with a story that tugs on your heartstrings. It also has a unique combat system with the emotion system that takes traditional turn-based combat and adds another layer to that. It has a very robust and varied soundtrack that highlights each moment, taking you on a roller coaster ride of different emotions. You can get Omori on PS5, Switch, and PC. Undertale is one of those indie games that really broke through into the mainstream arena. It has an interesting combination of things going for it, multiple different ways to play through it, and that's part of what makes it so unique. You can play through the entire game without killing any enemies, or you can choose to take down every single person that you see. It has so many cool ideas that make it stick out from the pack. It also has a combat system that is active, requiring you to really pay close attention to what you're doing, as it's in real time. What really solidifies this as a good pick for people that like Earthbound is the tone and the quirky sense of humor with darker undertones. It also has a similarly simplistic art style that does a great job of utilizing its simplicity to push forward very strong themes. The soundtrack is absolutely fantastic as well. It's a huge part of what made this game continue to have new fans coming to it. Toby Fox, the developer, has said that Earthbound was a big influence on Undertale, so it only makes sense to put it here on this list. You can play Undertale on all modern consoles and PC. And moving straight from one game inspired by Earthbound into another, we have Lisa the Painful. This is a game that has a quirky art style with some dark humor that doesn't shy away from very heavy themes. What makes it so unique and interesting is that it feels like it took those darker moments from Earthbound and expanded those out into the entire game. It has a ton of interesting and weird characters, all within a post-apocalyptic world, and it actively ties the themes and darker ideas directly into the gameplay. It does this in various ways, but one of those is introducing permadeath as a mechanic. There are various status effects that can be applied to your characters that causes them to die permanently. You can also sacrifice party members at various different points for a few different reasons that you'll have to just find out for yourself. The combat is very much reminiscent of Earthbound with the JRPG style turn-based combat, so for people that really want to dive into heavier themes with some similar styles, Lisa the Painful may be the way to go. They've just released a new edition of it relatively recently called Lisa Definitive Edition that is available on all modern consoles and PC. Oneshot is an indie game that focuses a bit more on the puzzle aspect of this style of game, with a unique art style and a narrative that really focuses on trying to hit you where it hurts. It also has a soundtrack that pulls you into the story and the atmosphere of the game. What makes Oneshot unique is the way that it uses the player's computer to solve puzzles and progress. It's hard to talk about that without, spoiling things, but no, the game will not give you a virus, but you will have a few interactions outside of the game as you play that are very interesting. It makes the main character feel much more distinct from you yourself, as sometimes the game will talk to you directly. The premise of the game is that it's up to you to save a dying world and restore its sun, which is why Oneshot has a pretty heavy atmosphere. You can get Oneshot on Steam and Nintendo Switch. There are also a couple of really cool looking games that are coming up that are worth mentioning, so let's start with one coming very soon in October. Cairn Mateir's Curse is an indie game that very much leans into that Earthbound JRPG style. It wears the inspiration on its shoulder. But what's really interesting is that it actually focuses a lot on Celtic mythology and its Scottish culture, so that gives it a bit of a different feeling. It has some very familiar looking combat with strange and sometimes furniture like enemies. Obviously, since it isn't out yet, it's hard to give a lot of information about it. But from what I've seen, it has some good potential and it's worth looking at. It releases on October 9th, 2025 on Steam. Another game to keep an eye on is the game that was once called Redacted 4, but has since changed the name because obviously Nintendo may not have liked what they called it before, so it's now called Oddity. As much as I'd like to be able to tell you when this game is coming out, I can't because it's been stretched out and teased a lot over time with no sign of an actual release date. I do, however, think this is one of the most promising looking Earthbound style games that we've seen. So that makes it worth at least mentioning on this list. Keep an eye out because this one could get an announcement at any time, or it could continue to be dust in the wind. So that's all the games I have for you to start off with. Some you can play right now, some that should come later. If you have any games that you think people that love Earthbound should play, let me know what they are in the comments. I do videos like this and about RPGs of all kinds, so if you like that, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.